Welcome to Stories for Wonderful Children. I'm Dan Wendelin, your host and storyteller. For many years, I improvised a new bedtime story for my children every night. Now, with their permission, I'm sharing the recordings of the best of those stories with you. Right now, we're about halfway through a long story that I told during the pandemic lockdown of 2020 about a girl who attends an online school for adventuring named Myra. I hope that you enjoy it as much as we did. When Myra got back to her room, she wasn't altogether surprised, but was a little disappointed that Tweety wasn't back yet from taking the cinnamon rolls to the wargs. But Myra was really tired after her trek through the forest and the dishwashing for cook and her run-in with the administrator. And now, on top of it all, Parents' Weekend was coming. And so she shucked off her pack and then, barely pausing to take off her shoes, she climbed into her bunk and was asleep pretty much the moment her head hit the pillow. She woke groggy some hours later. It was full dark outside, and she wondered how long she'd been asleep. She leaned over the side of her bunk and then sat up quickly. Tweety was not in her bed of sand in the lower bunk, nor was Tweety sitting at Tweety's desk. Myra quickly surveyed the room, but saw no signs that Tweety had returned. She ran to the window and looked out at the clock tower in the center of campus. It was 3 a.m. Myra put her boots back on and went outside. She walked across the quiet campus to the edge of the forest. It was quiet and dark under the trees. Myra knew better now than to enter the forest alone at night. But she stood there for a moment and then called, "Tweety! Tweety!" But only the sounds of insects, things moving in the undergrowth, returned to her ears. Myra looked around, frustrated. There was nothing in the forest that thought Tweety tasted good as far as Myra could tell. What had happened to Tweety? Myra returned to her room, but there was certainly no sleep now, and so she unpacked her pack, threw away trash, and folded her clothes and put dirty clothes aside for cleaning. And then she sat down and caught up with her sneaker homework from the last 3 days from when she'd been in the forest. She noticed, as she finished her homework, that on her desk was the campus newsletter, including an article about Parents' Weekend. She was looking forward to seeing her parents, but at the same time, she was a little nervous. They knew that the line had assigned her to be a sneaker, but this was going to be the first time she'd seen them since she started down that path. When she had left home for school, they had all been so sure that she would be selected to be a fighter, like her parents and her sister, and she wasn't really sure how they would feel about it. She wasn't really sure how she felt about it, especially now that she had kind of come to realize that she liked it. There was something about being a sneaker that seemed right to her, something about disappearing into the shadows, something about being able to move without a sound, something about paying careful attention to your surroundings and noticing things that others might miss. It wasn't so much that she was worried that her parents were going to be upset that the line had chosen her to be a sneaker. It was that she felt guilty, that she felt like the line had been right, that she was where she belonged. But she also desperately wanted to know that didn't mean that she didn't belong with her family anymore. And Kisa had made her feel better about that, but But that wasn't quite the same as her parents saying that they were fine with it. They had written her and congratulated her and asked her about her schoolwork, and they seemed enthusiastic, but she was just nervous about seeing them face to face wearing her sneaker robes on Parents' Weekend. And then sitting there, she decided that thinking about this was not getting any homework done and not getting her ready for the next day. And so she looked down and realized that she had finished all her homework and that she had cleaned out her backpack already. And so she went on a cleaning spree and cleaned out her desk and changed her sheets, made her bed. And by the time she had finished cleaning her room most vigorously, the sun was coming up. And so she decided she was going to hit the cafeteria early. After she ran one other errand, she headed across campus until she had reached the administrator building. And behind the administration building, she headed to the cave where the stalker llamas lived. She stood at the entrance. "Hello," she said. "I'd like to report a missing student." Nothing. "Hello?" She took a step into the stalker llama cave, and one was standing there, looking at her intently. "Hi," Myra said. "So, I'm sure you all remember my roommate Tweety gives cold, rocky hugs." The stalker llama looked like it was chewing its cud, or getting ready to spit at her, or just thinking. She really wasn't entirely sure. "Anyway," she said, "Tweety went to the forest with a bunch of cinnamon rolls, and I haven't seen Tweety since then. And since you all are always watching for things, I was hoping maybe you might keep an eye out for Tweety." The stalker llama just stared at her. "All right," said Myra. "Good talk. Thanks." And she headed for the cafeteria. When she got there, before she went and got food, which did smell wonderful, she knocked on the door to the kitchen. There was no reply. She knocked again. The door flew open, and Cook's big face poked out. "What?" said Cook. Myra said, "Yeah, I wanted to ask you about my roommate, Tweety." "She hasn't brought my pan back yet," said Cook. "Yeah," said Myra. Tweety hasn't actually come back yet, as far as I can tell." "What?" said Cook. "Yeah," said Myra. Tweety said that Tweety was going to the forest to take your cinnamon rolls to the wargs, and Tweety didn't come back to the room last night." "Huh," said Cook. "Well, sounds like you ought to get your friends together and go looking for Tweety. And when you see Tweety, tell Tweety I want my pan back." "Okay," said Myra. "Thanks." And then she went and got a plate full of food. She felt so relieved to see her friends sitting there around the table. Hetty, Antoine, Willow, Corin, Chelsea. She put her tray down and without preamble said, "Tweety's missing." "What?" said Corin. "What do you mean?" Myra leaned in. "It's worse," she said. "Tweety had the shears." "Oh, no, 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 no," said Hetty. "How could this happen?" And Myra told them the story of how the administrator had showed up, and she had been sure that he was looking for the shears. "I just felt it," Myra said. "And so I palmed them off to Tweety, and Tweety had them when Tweety went to the forest to give the wargs the cinnamon rolls. And now Tweety hasn't come back." "And we don't know how to find the deer," said Corin. "We don't have the faintest idea where to go looking for Tweety." "So," said Myra, "what do we do now?" "Now," she heard Keese's voice behind her, "now you all go to class, because you've been missing for several days, and flunking out is not a great way to welcome Mom and Dad back for Parents' Weekend. And I am going to go with some of the third years, and we're going to take a little survey of the forest for your missing friend and roommate, all right? Myra turned around and just grabbed Kisa in a hug. It's okay, said Kisa. It'll be okay. I'm not sure it will, said Myra. Kisa held her at arm's length. Look, she said, it'll be okay. We'll find Tweety, and we'll see Mom and Dad this weekend, and they're going to be very proud of you. Are you sure? Said Myra. I think they're mostly coming to see you right before you graduate. Their fighter daughter, just what they always wanted. Kisa looked at her. You, she said, are being ridiculous. Mom and Dad love us both, and they're proud of both of us. And they will tell you that themselves when they get here this weekend. Provided, of course, you don't flunk out of your sneaker classes between now and then. So you go to class, and we will take a little stroll through the forest. You'll see Tweety before you know it. All right, said Myra. Okay. All right. And she took a deep breath, and she felt a little better, and she headed off to class. And that's the end for tonight. Thanks for listening to Stories for Wonderful Children. I created today's show, but questions and commentary were supplied by my children. The theme music was written by Brandon Thompson, and our wonderful logo was designed by Silas Wendelin. If you're enjoying the show, please tell someone about it, and leave a review with your podcast provider. You can now subscribe to the show to get extra stories and longer chapters of Myra and the Online School that combine multiple segments into a longer episode. The show's website is storiesforwonderfulchildren.buzzsprout.com. Until next time, I'm Dan Wendelin, reminding you to tell someone you love a story.